Everybody, welcome to Chin Fat. In this episode, I'm going to be going over a camera that has been around for a little while, but I haven't done any sort of tutorials or demonstrations on it. So I really and it's been a really nice little workhorse camera and a very affordable camera as well. It's a camera that shoots in RAW. This is the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, 4K, the 4K version, which comes with a micro four thirds mount and a micro four thirds sensor. So it's a bit smaller than other cameras. The sensor size is a little bit smaller than other cameras. But this one has been a really nice image quality, really nice and convenient to use, pretty light. So if you're using it on a gimbal or something, that works really, really well. Yeah, so let's go over this one. Some things on this episode, I'm just going to be going over the accessories that I use on this camera to get it up and running. You can pretty much just slap a lens on it, pop a battery in, and you're out and recording. But if you want to accessorize it a bit, make it more like a cinema camera, we're going to show how to do that. I'm going to show you the accessories that we've purchased to do that. First of all, one thing that we use with this camera is this Tilta Cage. So this is the Tilta Cage for the Blackmagic 4K here. They can be purchased online from Tilta, from B&H, from Adorama, a whole bunch of different places, Amazon, etc. But the camera will just basically slide right into the back of the cage like this. And it actually has two connection points. Usually the screws are stored to connect. You have one on top and you have one on bottom, and usually the screws, they're just screwed into one of these little holes next to it. To make it so you don't lose those screws there. So I'm going to grab this little screw out of here, and we're going to mount this camera inside. It's got 2 points that connect the camera, one on top right there, and you line this up so that big hole right there is open, and you can just put it right in there. Tighten that up with the Allen key. Get that snug. And then on the bottom, you have this little expanded tray there with the same size of Allen thread. Remove that. That, like I said, that's kind of a temporary resting space until you get this mounted to the camera. Because sometimes you might want to take this camera out of the cage and put it onto a gimbal or something like that, so it fits onto a small gimbal. All right, once you get that snug, there it is inside the cage. And then you've got this little base plate that comes with the Tilta Cage here. And this is going to hook onto a speed plate and then hook onto a tripod here. I'm going to show you the way I like to do this. I like, personally, getting this Tilta Dovetail plate here. This one's about a 12-inch dovetail plate that's used to connect. And I'm going to put all these accessories and all these things in the description, so if you want to find these things, you can. This dovetail makes it really quick and easy to get on and off the tripod really, really quickly without having to detach anything. And you just basically slide it off. So what I do here is we've got right here, this is a Manfrotto 504X tripod head here. And I've got this on I got this on a hi-hat here, a 70mm hi-hat. I'm going to take the plate off here. And what I've got here is I like to use 2 screws in this. This usually comes with a couple extra screws, and I put 2 screws just if once you tighten that on, it doesn't make the camera swivel on that single screw. If you do 2 screws, it keeps it from swiveling. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the speed plate. I like to load it from behind instead of forward. So I'm going to slide the camera on this way, so the speed plate's going to go on the same direction. But what you're going to do is you're basically going to put these 2 things together, so you have the speed plate dovetail from the tripod head, kind of going beveling in toward the dovetail from the Tilta here. I'll show you why we're going to do this. I'm going to put these little 1/4-inch screws in here. Kind of put it in the middle of the tray. I find that I want to put this in the middle of the tray here. Kind of hand tighten those. Then I'm going to take a screwdriver, flathead here, and I'm going to tighten those things down. Make them nice and snug. And now I'm going to take this and we're going to put it on the tripod head. So I'm going to put that on there. So now what we've got is something that we can quickly load this camera on without having to take anything off. So we can just keep this on the tripod head. And I like to build my cameras on the tripod head, have them on the actual tripod or when you're building these, so you're not sitting there holding this camera that you're going to drop to the ground. All right, so I've got the base plate for the Tilta here. So on the back here, we've got this little latch that will keep the camera from sliding off. But you make sure that this is not unlocked. That's your little slide lock right there. Slide it, get it about in the middle, and lock it up. Now it's not going to move. And I've got my tripod locked. I've got the tilt lock, and I've got the pan locked on here as well, so the camera doesn't accidentally tilt and fall over or anything like that. And now I can take the camera, And this is going to be a side-to-side slide right here. It's got the same little thing, kind of a similar little release right there. But I'm going to grab this. That's the way it goes on, is this direction. It goes past that release there. So I'm going to slide that in. And now we're going to lock that. Right here, we're going to lock that. There's a little lock under there. We're going to push on that and lock it so this cannot slide back and forth. Next, we've got this top handle here that we're going to install that comes with the Tilta Cage. So we're just going to take this top handle here, and we're going to put it in this little tray up here and slide it in. This doesn't go all the way back. You don't push it all the way back because it will not go into that screw that holds the camera in. So you just push it back a couple holes there, a couple of the 1/4 inch 20 screw holes there, and kind of push it down a little bit as you're screwing and get that screwed in. And now we've got our top handle so we can pick up our camera, carry it around if we need to take it off the tripod. Another thing that the Tilta Cage comes with is this little shield on the back. Kind of shield. What this does is it basically shields out light from around, so you can kind of see the screen if you're outside. This really helps. But you've got the screw that like stores on top here that comes out and will attach this device here. But before I do that, what we want to do is we want to connect. This is kind of an interesting little feature that they have with the Tilta Cage. Since you can shoot with solid state cards, this tray is really specifically built for the Samsung T5 or Samsung T7 hard drives. This is a 1 terabyte hard drive right here, that's going to be able to slide into this tray here, and you're going to be able to record right directly onto this hard drive. And then you can pop that out, go stick it onto your computer, and edit it on your computer. So first of all, we're going to attach that to that little screen there. And the way you do that is you've got these two little screws on the back side right here, the little teeny screws right there. Those little teeny screws right there on the back right there. They're going to take those out, and we're going to put them right on. We're going to put them right back onto there's little 2 screw holes right there on the back of this little screen. And the hard drive the hard drive receptacle sits right on top of this light guard here. So we're going to take those little screws out, and I'm going to slide this tray right up against it so those holes are there. And you've got this little node that's on the bottom there, and that's going to go right into this little hole that's in your light guard right there. And you're just going to put it in so these 2 little screw holes line up with the back, like right there. And I'm going to put those screws in. And I'll see if I can get a close-up and show you. And there you go. You can see how that tray now sits. I've screwed these little teeny screws in right there. And then I've got that aiming down, and you got that little node on the bottom that attaches in, that falls into that little hole right there. So now we've got that tray basically installed on this thing here. And now we're going to connect this to the camera. So on the camera, you've got this little screw up here that stows on the cage, as long as you don't take that out and forget about it and drop it and lose it. And we're going to put this and then we're going to put this screen. I'm going to screw that in like so. We've got that screen on there. We've got the little card holder on top, and now we can install a card onto it. But first of all, you have this little USB-C cable that comes with it as well. And you have this little, the 90-degree angle right there, which is going to go right into the camera on the side here. You're going to plug that in, and then you can screw this into the cage so it keeps that cable from bending and ruining the port. So this little screw goes right here into the cage. All right, then we're going to once we get that started right there, we're going to screw this in. And once that's screwed in, that will hold that in and keep it from getting bent and breaking your port there. And then this little part right here that will plug into your drive will go up here and screw into this little hole in the back of your card holder. And keep that a little loose because you want to be able to rotate that a little bit and slide it into the card. Now you're going to take your SD card here, your solid state drive here, and you got the side with the port right there. I'm going to slide this into the tray. Make sure this is loose on top here. Make sure that this screw is loose right here on top a little bit, so it's not trying to, because that's what holds that hard drive in. And if it's hard to push the hard drive in, then the screw needs to be loosened right here, the one that's on the back of the tray. So I'm going to slide that. I'm going to push together until I feel it click into place. All right, so now we've got that little back protective screen on. We've got the cable running to the hard drive, which is installed, and we're ready to move on to the next step here. All right, so next, if these don't come from Tilta, you can get these from, these are just SmallRig. These are about 1 foot, 15 millimeter rods that are going to fit this Tilta Cage here. We're going to put it on the back here. We're going to slide these into these little 15 millimeter rod holes right here. And the screws to tighten them are on the side, on both sides right here and right there. We're going to slide these in because we want to be able to accessorize a follow focus and a matte box on this. So I'm going to just tighten that down. We're going to adjust these later as we start to install items onto this. And then I'm going to get those about equidistant here, about the same distance away, and then tighten those down a little bit. I'm not going to really tighten this down super snug right now because, like I said, I am going to be adjusting this. And if these screws happen to be hitting at your end of your camera here, what you can do is you can pull these screws out like this, and it releases it off the tightening mechanism, and you can rotate it back a little ways, and that way it didn't loosen it, but now I can tighten it down. It's not smacking the camera anymore. Kind of a nice little thing that Tilta does there with those screws there, with those little releases. All right, next we're going to install this. This is going to be a battery adapter that's going to adapt this one specifically is an IndiPRO gold mount to Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera power connection right here. So you can run these things like a really long time for several hours off of one single this is, like I said, they have either V mount battery. I go with the gold pin. I go with the gold mount. I like the gold mount that has these 3 pins that lock into place and powers it up like right there. So I'm going to slide this on the back. We're going to show you the batteries as well. I'm going to put this right on the back of the 15mm rod there. I like to have this just pushed in a little bit to where this is hitting so it doesn't hang down low. If you're trying to get it out of the way, you can totally hang it down low like that. But I'm going to move this out about right there, tighten that on, and now I've got that little battery tray right there. So now I'm going to take the power cable. I'm going to put it into the side of the camera right here, and we're going to put it into the side of the camera here. This is a little 2-pin slot here to power up the camera. What I do is I usually look at where the pin configuration and then try to line that up. And then you can rotate that just a little bit until you feel it fall into place, just lightly pushing in while you rotate it. It's got a little sleeve on it that you pull the sleeve back to release it. But you'll see that sleeve kind of pop into place. You'll see that sleeve pop out just once again. I just lightly push down on it while I'm rotating a little bit until you feel it fall into place. So you're not bending any pins or anything like that. These right here are what they call gold mount batteries. These ones specifically are the Neo Hypercore ones. These are a little bit thicker. It says it's got like 4 hours and 30 minutes. It says it's got 4 hours and 34 minutes left of power on this thing. But you have a little battery check on the side here that you can push the button, and you can see that the lights light up and say that the battery's full there. So now I'm going to put this on. The way this goes on, and you line up these pins here with a receptacle on this battery plate, and you push it over that direction until you feel it click into place. There is a release right here. If you hold down that little release, you can push it to the left, and then it comes off. So that helps hold that battery on. And like I said, if you want to get this out of the way of your screen, you can just kind of roll this back and let this battery kind of hang down low like that. But we are going to be adjusting this as we put on the follow focus in a little bit here. So now that's going to power the camera there. In fact, I can turn on the camera on top. Camera's booting up, and we've got power. So I'm going to turn that off for now. All right, next, we're going to put a lens on this. I'm going to go through a couple different lenses here, but these are some micro four thirds lenses here that I really like. These are the DZO Zoom Lenses. I've got 2 of them. I've got a 10-24, and this has a micro four thirds mount, so it connects right to this camera here. Like I said, you can get adapters, but keep in mind if you're using a Canon camera, Canon lens that's built for a full frame or for a Super 35. So if you use something like a Canon lens and you want to use a Canon lens on this, you can get an adapter to put onto it. I'll show you some adapter choices, but keep in mind that if you're taking a Canon lens that's built for a full frame sensor, this has a micro four thirds sensor, which is about 1/4 the size of a full frame sensor. So you got this big circle of light that's coming in, and you're basically going to get a crop factor where you're not where it's going to make your camera look like if you have a 35mm lens and you put it on a Canon lens and you put it on here with all that big circle of light that you're getting and a little teeny sensor in the middle, you're going to be losing a lot of information around the edges. That's going to look more like a 50 to 70mm lens, like a zoomed in, because it's called a crop factor. So these things are built more for the micro four thirds. These work really well on this camera here. First of all, I've got this because this is such a longer lens. I've got a 20-70 and a 10-24. So I've got a good coverage focal length there from 10 to 70mm with these 2 lenses. But this is a lens support here, this SmallRig lens support here. And I'm going to put this on the front here because we're going to put this lens on. And with longer lenses, they tend to weigh down and it can kind of ruin your mount here. So you usually want to get a lens support for this camera if you have this big and heavy of a lens. Let's get a 20 to 70 millimeter on here. I'm going to take off the lens. I'm going to take off the sensor cap here and take off the back cap off this lens. And we're going to line up the red dot that's on the back of the lens there with this red dot on the lens mount here. Get it flush, rotate it to the right until it clicks. Take off the lens cap there, the front cap. All right, so we notice here this lens support is a little too far back here where it's going to push on the gear. So I'm going to do a little finagling here. I'm going to lift up the battery, and you can get longer rods as well. In this case, probably longer rods would be very helpful. But I'm going to get my battery up a little bit, push that forward a little bit, because I want to slide these rods up here. So I'm going to loosen the rods. I'm going to push these things up until it kind of lines up with the base of the lens right there. Right about there. And I'm getting the end of the rods here, even with the front of the lens, because I'm also going to connect a matte box to this and a follow focus as well. There we go. So I've got that adjusted. Now I'm going to take this lens support and I'm going to push it up. I'm going to just barely push on it so it alleviates a little bit. You'll see that lens, see how it barely moves? You don't want to push it up too high, just a little bit to release some of that downwards push on the lens mount there. And now I'm going to tighten that up. And now that's alleviating the weight off of the lens mount there. All right, so next you're going to put on a follow focus. These ones here, I like these ones. They're very affordable. These are called MOV cams. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, or Move Cam is the brand name. These ones I like because you have this little wheel, the gear wheel. You can take it off and put it on either side of the follow focus device. So then if it's like too close, or if it's too tight, and like where you got a lot of accessories on here, this can flip, and then you can put it basically on either side and get, and it's easy to make sure that it's not smacking into items like that, like the lens support. But first of all, what you've got here is you've got on the back, you've got this little release. So this is kind of unique to the MOV cam here, where this thing actually folds out right here like that. And then folds back to make it more, what would you call it, more compact. So I'm going to take this out here to use it, and I'm going to tighten this screw right here and make sure I'm holding this all together to make sure that these are all flat here and not on an angle. And then you've got the rod connectors right here. This screw is what loosens it to pop it onto the rods, and then this releases the slide, so you can adjust the slide on this thing. If you loosen that, now it slides out further. With those things loose, I'm going to put this on the rods. I'm going to push this down, and right now it's not going down, so I have to loosen this screw, the rod screw, and get it on. Now it's on, and now I'm going to get it adjusted to line it right up with my focus here, and I'm going to tighten that down. All right, so now I'm going to slide this. I did loosen my slide, so my slide, and that's that screw that's underneath in the middle here that I showed you. I'm going to push it right up against my focus here, make sure that it's grabbing onto my focus and turning the gears, and I'm going to tighten this. That's another thing I like about the DZO cameras, is these are built for cinema. And cinema basically means, cinema lenses means that it has these gears on it. These gears that you go all the way to one end and go all the way to the other end like this, and you have the whole breadth of the whole focus range right there on your follow focus. And now you can mark your follow focus. And if you have an assistant camera person running focus, and you can just change focus here by running this thing here. So we got it tightened to the rod, we got the slide locked, and got it up against the focus gear there. And one other little accessory you can get if you want to, if you have an AC running, this is called a whip right here. And this whip will connect into the side here. And what this is a shock absorber. So if somebody's running focus, they're grabbing here, it's not shaking your camera as much. And if they grab this out here, this absorbs the shock right here, and then they can rotate and they can focus without shaking your camera, which is kind of cool. So that's called a whip there. And next we're going to be going over the matte box here. So this brand of matte box that I've got is called a Fotga, F-O-T-G-A matte box. Very affordable one that you can get. And this one here has the trays that are on the inside. If you're going to be adding filters, the tray here, you can see that it has a 4x4 adapter in it. If you have 4x5, glass, you can take that out and put in a 4x5 piece of glass there as well. And this comes with 2 filter trays, so you can put up to 2 filters in here, especially if you're shooting outside and you need to put some ND filters in. Since the Blackmagic does not have built-in NDs, which is fine, then that's then you have to put this matte box on in the filter tray. But if you do put in filters, you do have to have what are called donuts or nuns and knickers. These donuts here are made for different sizes of lenses that you can put in. Because what happens is if you put a piece of glass in one of these trays here, the light can come from behind the camera and hit the glass, and it reflects into the camera, and you see reflections and weird ghosting going on. So you need to put in some donuts. You need to put in a donut to kind of avoid that. But you've got your matte box arm here we're going to put on. And I'm going to, actually, what I'm going to do with this lens support is I've got the screw popping out where it's getting in the way of the matte box. So I can just slide that back a little bit and get a little further back. So that's not going to be hitting my matte box. Like I said, I like to keep these rods right even with the very end of the lens. It's kind of a good general rule of thumb. And now I'm going to pop this on. I'm going to put the matte box extending out to the opposite side of where I've got the follow focus, so it's not in the way of the follow focus. And pop that on. Get that tight. And now we can put the matte box on like so. Slide those in there. And now you can have this little release switch here. You can pull that up and shut the matte box. Get it slid back. So it's barely at the back of this is barely at the front of the lens there. And you also have, if you need to raise it up at all, you do have these little screws here that make the matte box go up and down. And then you can make sure that the lens is right in the center there, which it looks like it is. So we're in good shape. But let's put one of the donuts in. So I want to size up the donut here, make sure that it's going to fit, that's going to be the proper size for the lens here. So I'm going to hold up a couple of these different donuts here. That actually looks like it's probably the right size right there. It's barely hitting around the rim of the lens there. So that's going to be the right size. On this particular matte box, this ring right here pops right off. You just rotate it a little bit, screw it, and now you can put this donut into the tray. Like that. And now you're going to put that back on and rotate and click this back into place right there until it's tight. And now I can pull up my pin, push that up against the lens. And I like to make sure that's scooted back just a little bit so that that donut ring should be barely touching the lens, should be barely pressurized against the lens. And that way you won't have any light from behind that comes in and hits the glass and reflects. That's blocking the light from coming in. You do have these flags that go on the top here and go on the sides if you want. I usually like it on the top just to help avoid lens flare coming in, because usually lights are positioned above, and that keeps light from coming down and hitting the lens and getting lens flares if you wish. And you can just dip this thing down till it's the right level. And you just want to make sure that if you do this, that it's not going down in front of the lens and seeing the top of the flag. And now that the camera is all built, one thing that I really like to do is make sure that this thing is balanced. So if you have your tilt lock turned off, I'm going to turn my tilt lock off. You can see that this thing is really front heavy right now. So what I like to do is I like to get that balanced a little bit. And a way of doing that is I've got the main plate that's that this is connected to on the tripod. You can slide that back a little ways. So I'm going to loosen up my slide just for this. I'm going to pull it backwards. This will not come off the tray. It's got that, it will not come off of the tripod. But right now, keep in mind, this is the speed plate that's sliding back and forth on the tripod, not the dovetail right there, which you can also do as well. You can also use the dovetail to balance it a little bit as well. But first of all, I just do it on the tripod like that. And then I will loosen it. Let's tighten that down. Loosen it and just see how that is doing now. Now it's just a little bit front heavy. Actually, that's doing pretty well right there. So you want to slide that back and forth until the camera is balanced. That way, if you leave your camera alone, you should always lock it. Whenever you're done operating your camera, you should lock it, and you should stay close to the camera and not leave it just because people can come by and bump it and knock it off and stuff like that. So yeah, when you leave your tripod alone, make sure you lock it. But then when you operate, I always grab the pan handle on the back, and then I'll loosen my tilt, loosen my pan, the lock on my pan and tilt, and now you're free to operate. As soon as you're through operating, before you let go of the pan handle, you tighten your lock on your tilt, your pan, and then you can let go, but then you stay close to your camera and you guard it, of course, especially if it's an expensive camera or expensive lenses. You don't want it to tip over. And if it's front heavy, it can basically tip over, and then it will pull the whole camera forward and pull the whole tripod forward and hit the ground. So yeah, just a little warning there. So you always want to make sure that when you loosen those locks, you have your hand on the pan handle. All right, well, thanks for watching this episode. In the next episode, I'm going to be going over some different types of lenses you can use, and some types of lens mounts you can use, and types of adapters you can use to adapt your if you have like Canon lenses, if you have Nikon lenses, to adapt it to fit on your Micro Four Thirds, but also a way to make sure that you're not losing a lot of that image from that big circle of light hitting your smaller sensor. So we'll talk about that.